Hi everyone, this is the Big 12 Ranking and Matchup Show for October 24th. Yep, got a lot of reshuffling to do after some upsets in conference play this past week. Let's go ahead and begin at number 12 with Baylor. You know, if you had an Academy Award to give out for the worst Big 12 football team of all time, in my opinion, there's no doubt that the Baylor Bears would walk away with the Oscar. I mean, pitiful. The Bears lose at Iowa State, a team that hasn't won a conference game in 2 years. Good job, Baylor. Way to stay true to form. I know you might be thinking if Robert Griffin, their quarterback, hadn't got hurt earlier in the year, Baylor would have won this game. Well, that might be true, but remember, teams have to deal with injuries. Look at Oklahoma. If they hadn't had their share of injuries, they wouldn't be 3-3 right now. Injuries are part of the game, and Baylor, they're back where they belong, cellar dwellers of the Big 12, and again, they won't go to a bowl game. What's new? At number 11, Texas A&M. The Aggies gave up over 60 points at Kansas State. A&M is so bad, they're terrible. Oh, okay, that's too easy, all right? Way too easy. I have a parting shot for A&M, but I'll save it for later. Don't want to miss that. At number 10, congratulations to head coach Paul Rhodes and his Iowa State Cyclones. First conference victory since 2007. And for the Cyclones, even better news. They don't play Oklahoma, Texas, or Texas Tech this season. Bad news, though, they still have Oklahoma State on the schedule. They still have to go to Nebraska this week. So, but at least for right now, the Cyclones are on cloud 9. At least this is as good as it'll get in Cyclone land. At number 9, I'm going to move up Kansas State a couple of spots. They moved from 11 to 9. Again, not too talented of a team, but Bill Snyder, the head coach, who I criticized for coming back, and I still do, he's at least getting the most out of this squad. A big victory. They score over 60 this week after giving up over 60 the week before. So good bounce back for the Wildcats. At number 8, the Missouri Tigers, who had a nice September, but it's been a nightmarish October. They blow the lead against Nebraska a few days ago, this past Saturday at Oklahoma State. They can't score a point in the second half. As a matter of fact, they only mustered 80 total yards in that game. They are a team that's not in very good shape. They're also a wounded squad. Missouri at 0-2 in Big 12 play, looking at 0-3 pretty easily because they're playing Texas this Saturday night on national television. Then, number 7, the Colorado Buffaloes, who pulled off a stunner at home against previously unbeaten and top 20 ranked Kansas. See what happens when you don't play the coach's son at quarterback. See what happens when you also tweak things here and there like the running game. You score points. You can score points. And in this case, Colorado scored 34 of them and handed Kansas an L. And this is a North Division, I remind you, where everybody's lost at least one game. Colorado will play A&M at home. They get Missouri at home and Nebraska at home. Could Colorado win the North Division? Oh, don't laugh. It could very well happen because the North is wide open. It's wide open partially because number 6, Kansas, had a chance to have the sole possession lead in the North but blew it by losing at Colorado. See what happens when you play a mediocre September schedule. It comes back to bite you. Not that Colorado is an impressive team, but Colorado might have been the best team that Kansas had seen prior to the game on Saturday. So, for the Jayhawks, time to regroup. We'll see if they can do that against Oklahoma. Hopefully they won't. At number 5, Nebraska, they drop from 2 to 5 as they get shellacked at home by Texas Tech, a team that they just cannot seem to beat. 4 losses in a row against the Red Raiders, and Bo Pelini, he was very upset after the game at both his team and the media. And now Pelini is saying that it's going to be a game-time decision as to which quarterback he is going to go to. He can go with the freshman QB and Cody Green, or he can stay with Zach Lee. Lee was horrible against the Red Raiders. So Nebraska looked like maybe they were going to be a top 10 team the way they were looking. Now they're out of the polls. Back to the drawing board in Husker land. Now, we're going to go to number 4. That's the Oklahoma Sooners. Why are they ranked so low on my poll, you might ask? Because they've lost 3 games. Doesn't matter how they lost them, they're 3-3. That's not pretty. But why do I have them ranked so high, you might ask? Because the 3 teams that they lost to are all ranked, and they lost to them by very close margins. You have to take that into consideration. Plus, Oklahoma, I think, is going to have an opportunity to maybe win 5 out of 6 games during the second half of this season. Maybe they'll win 6 of 6 and get to a decent bowl game. We'll see what happens, but the first half, I don't think For Oklahoma fans, they were expecting 3-3, but the second half should not be as rough so long as they don't have more injuries. At number 3, how about the Texas Tech Red Raiders? Who said this was going to be a rebuilding year for Mike Leach? They go to Lincoln, and they put a spanking on the Cornhuskers. And to tell you the truth, it wasn't even a typical Mike Leach offensive performance. They've had much better offensive performances than that from an execution standpoint, and they still won comfortably by 3 touchdowns. A little bit of bad news for Tech, though. It looks like Stephen Sheffield won't be available against A&M on Saturday. That's okay. They won't need him. The Sheffield foot injury now means that Taylor Potts will resume his quarterback duties. We now go to number 2, the Oklahoma State Cowboys. Talk about a team who's overcome plenty. They do not have Kendall Hunter. Their running back haven't had him since the Houston game. They don't know how much longer they're going to be without Des Bryant, who's still ineligible according to the NCAA. But Oklahoma State, despite these distractions, has still been able to take care of business on the field. An impressive second half performance Saturday night in their win over Missouri. Oklahoma State now 2-0 in conference play. And all eyes looks like is pointed toward October 31st, Halloween night, in the game against Texas and what should decide the Big 12 South Championship. And number 1, the Texas Longhorns, until they lose, they're still number 1. Offensive-wise against Oklahoma, didn't do real good. You have to credit Oklahoma partially for that. But also, the Longhorns don't have a running game right now. McCoy doesn't look like himself. But the defense is one of the nation's best. They still are pretty good on special teams. And if they get past Oklahoma State, all roads are going to lead to the Big 12 Championship and appearance in the National Championship game. So we will see what happens a week from Saturday in the game that will decide, in my opinion, the South champion, Texas at Oklahoma State. But before then, still plenty of football because we're talking about October 24th games. This week, we'll go ahead and begin with Texas at Missouri, which will be a nationally televised game. Texas, a double-digit favorite to win this one, and why not? Missouri will come in not only with no momentum, but they're also pretty banged up. Don't know the status of Blaine Gabbert, who was basically limping in the second half in that matchup against Oklahoma State. If he thought Oklahoma State's defense hit him hard, he hasn't seen anything yet. Texas's defense, I think, will control this game. I don't look for a lot of points, but I do look for Texas to win and win something like 24-7, 27-10, something like that. Oklahoma State, will they get caught looking ahead to Texas? The Cowboys have to take care of Baylor in Waco. I don't know how Oklahoma State gets fired up to play the Bears, and with Texas looming, I don't think it's going to be a great Oklahoma State game, but I think they'll have enough to win. I would say something like 28-17, 31-17. Oklahoma State should take care of business, and then we can talk about that Halloween game in Stillwater. Now, a game that I think is going to be ugly, A&M at Tech. And this is the message I want to send to A&M fans. And if you're an A&M fan, I would love to hear from you. Do you wish you had R.C. Slocum back now? Slocum led A&M to their only Big 12 championship. That was 11 years ago. And because they didn't quite get back up to that level, he was pressured to basically get out at A&M. They've tried 2 head coaches since, and neither of them have been worth a squat. In fact, A&M just seems to get worse and worse, especially on defense. Sometimes when you want a head coach to go, sometimes your wish comes true, and sometimes you're in worse shape than you were before. So never take a terrific head coach for granted. I know A&M fans yearn for those days of R.C. Slocum because they're a lot better than what they have now. Tech should roll in this game at home. Kansas State hosting Colorado. I think this is going to be a pretty good ball game. I'll go with the home team in this case. K-State coming off that big win last week. I think they followed up with another win. Colorado, they've lost 4 games this year, and 3 of them are on the road. I know they beat Kansas last week, but that game was in Boulder. They're not going to win at Manhattan. I like K-State by a touchdown in that particular matchup. Iowa State at Nebraska. This will be a bounce-back week for the Huskers, no matter who they play at quarterback. Iowa State, you had fun against Baylor, but Nebraska, despite the loss last week to Tech, is a much better team. Plus, I don't ever remember Iowa State winning at Nebraska in my lifetime, and I'm considering myself a non-young guy. So Nebraska should bounce back, and they should walk away with a W. And then, finally, my game of the week in the Big 12, Oklahoma at Kansas. I think the winner of this game will carry a ton of momentum toward the rest of the season. If OU wins, then that means it's going to be at least an 8-4 season, with the only team having really a good chance to beat them will be the Texas Tech Red Raiders. And that's because the games in Lubbock, and Oklahoma never plays well in Lubbock, at least not the last 2 tries they haven't. And if Oklahoma loses, then that game at Lubbock will definitely be a loss. The game at Nebraska could be a loss. And even the game against OSU, despite it being in Norman, that could be a loss as well. If Oklahoma loses to Kansas this Saturday, it could be an emotional deflator for them because they would drop to 3-4. Kansas, if they lose, they're possibly looking at going downhill. With matchups still left at Texas and at Texas Tech, plus Nebraska left and Missouri, Kansas won't have an easy road one way or another, but a win would definitely boost their confidence, especially after the debacle in Boulder the week before. If Kansas can win, then they will be in contention for the North Championship, and I think 6-2, maybe 5-3 is good enough to win the North this year. So that does it for my matchup show. By the way, for my prediction of Oklahoma, Kansas, check out my weekly matchup show that I just posted on this page. Goodbye for now.